the way Muslims have structured themselves around their philosophy, they're designed to be slaves, and they're going to be the perfect slaves. And they knew that, Islam has nothing to do with politics, and politics has nothing to do with Islam. This kind of split and this chasm is okayed by the masjid. That's why you don't see masjids reacting to Palestine. What kind of a Muslim and clergy would say two-state solution for Israel and Palestine? That's not either a Muslim or a clergy. Our technology is far superior from Iranian drones and missiles going through Jordan to Israel. I've actually seen lectures where, mainstream scholars are literally saying that, these 17, 18 ayahs were just for the Rasulullah, not for the Ummah. I mean, it's like...
Why don't the Muslims around the world apply that same pressure on their governments to the point that their governments must respond the same way Pakistan responded to India?
We were enslaved by force. We are not supposed to be thriving under any system which is other than the system of God.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdullah Al-Andalusi, and I'm here on Narrative House podcast today with a special guest, someone who I've heard quite a lot about during my recent trip to Pakistan, and someone that I've actually known even beyond the borders of Pakistan, quite internationally. Brother Sahil Adeem, a pleasure to have you on.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I'm a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is an individual who's known for an academic, a thinker, philosopher, activist, and avid commentator and analyst for a number of geopolitical matters, issues, as well as the societal commentary, Islam, religion, world politics, and a bit more besides. Psychology as well. You're quite very well known for this. And so we are very honored to have today someone so we can discuss some very important questions, which someone who obviously is living in Pakistan and is based in Pakistan and has seen the different the changes over the many years, and also looking at the world in your travels. There's been a number of concerns been raised in the Muslim world, and noticed that the West is not neutral when it comes to the topic of Islam itself. They don't say simply, we'll leave Islam to be what it is. It's not for us to dictate what Muslims believe or what they shouldn't believe. And we've seen that the Iran Corporation, a very powerful US think tank, wrote a report which is over 2 decades ago, which explicitly discussed the strategies to indoctrinate the Muslim world with an idea of a civil democratic Islam, or a quote-unquote modern Islam. And we know that one of the ways that these ideas have been promoted is through educational curriculum and institutions. But the question is, how important is it for us as an Ummah to become aware of this attempt to present a modern or quote-unquote moderate Islam, which is aligned with Western values and interests?
I think it's pretty inevitable that any dominant power would try and put shock absorbers in their long-term strategy. And Qur'an is one of the biggest, it's the most shocking philosophy for any power which is going to try and create an imperial foothold for the rest of the world. Even Torah is, except for the Bible, every book of God is, because they really took the juice out of the Bible. St. Paul did, actually. But I'm not surprised that they, I think they're doing a really good job. I try and understand the real objective of the Quran. I wish more Muslims would read the Quran the way they're reading and try and see the potential of the book. Most Muslims right now actually are, with or without their help, I know mostly with their help in the last 2 decades, Rand Corporation is pretty avid in understanding and installing these kind of people inside the credible pedestals of Islam, trying to make Muslims docile in pushing them into an inferior psychology, trying to be more submissive to whatever power is going to be upon them. But I think the fact that anyone with a neutral eye would read the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and he's gonna see that this book has the potential to not only create the law install the law and maintain the law. And not just the law, but the implications of any and every political and the social, psychosocial aspect of billions of people at the same time. And even though corporations like these are themselves tainted by the Judeo-Christian philosophical underpinning, not psychological, philosophical underpinning. So they do find, those bridges to build between, those selling points, where a lot of people are going to fall prey to those terminologies, those, inroads through which regular Muslim who's not learned enough, who does not read on his own, is not equipped with the kind of knowledge of philosophy and understands how group psychology works, is easily going to fall prey to those commonalities between the way they want to achieve their objectives and or any dominant power will want to achieve their objective, and the way Qur'an wants to get people to Allah Azza wa Jal.
So, in your opinion, what do you think? Why does this agenda from the West concerning changing Islam, remolding it into a way to make Muslims more pliant, as you suggested, why does it not? Is it not treated as a matter of alarm, something that becomes a major concern for those in power or in politics in Pakistan or other parts of the Muslim world? What do you think stops them from seeing that this is a very explicitly claimed Western agenda that we cannot align with?
I think the current political powers, Islam, Pakistan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Indonesia, Malaysia or the North Africa, the current definition of Islam, which is prevalent, which is I'm talking about the philosophical side of it. It is a way more, it's a way bigger deterrent to the original philosophy of the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ than the Rand Corporation or anything else. I think the way Muslims have structured themselves, any dominant power, today is the West, tomorrow it could be China or anything else. The way Muslims have structured themselves around their philosophy, they're designed to be slaves, and they're going to be the perfect slaves. And you know why? Because they're going to be using the book of God to energize the slavery, to maintain their own slavery. They're just looking for a new master. It's anyone who's going to come over on top is going to have fatwas for him, regardless of whoever he is or she is, or wherever they come from. That's the problem, not the corporations which are working in America. I mean, I think any dominant power, that's the design of the human being. We are designed to dominate. That's the serotonergic behavior of every human being. It's inevitable. Surprise or abnormality is that when human beings in a group which have certain kind of, constants and variables in a civilization would not dominate or try not to dominate, that would be abnormal. America dominating the world right now, Victoria dominating the world from here in this city, the Dutch dominating, the Spanish, the Sumerians, the Mayans, you name it. Human beings are designed to dominate. That's exactly what Yuzhira al-Din Kulli actually was referring to. That if you're not going to do it, somebody else will, because that's the signature of God inside the fitrah of human beings.
So that brings a very interesting question. Which came first in the Muslim world, the slave mentality, or slave to humans, that is, or being dominated into having a slave mentality? So did it fall upon us?
It's not a chicken and egg thing. No, we were enslaved by force. Right after the Khulafai Rashidin, we were actually seeing the signs and traces coming in of oppression and suppression, and people were at that time they were trying to tweak whatever they could to get the best out of it, with the best of intent. But everybody knew, it's not like Islam was a best kept secret or a hidden Kabbalah kind of book or something. We're Muslims. We know whatever's the truth was out there. It was practiced for the first 30 years so evidently. Umar al-Khattab was like probably the best thing that ever happened to the human planet in terms of what a system has to offer. So it's not that we were philosophically slow poisoned into slavery. We were first oppressed, and then enough time had spent, enough books were forcefully written about how to obey the current masters that were upon us. That, see, when we talk about coming back into power, when I'm going to say that, it's going to seem as if it's unprecedented, because the kind of literature that Muslims read right now, I get that objection a lot. That, where are you coming from? Because this, we don't find a scholar who's precedenting all of this. And my answer to that is always that, why would you get a precedence? Because it's just 100 years ago that we did not have our own system. It's 1924. You want to find a scholar, you're going to find a scholar like Sayyid Qutb or Abul Ala Maududi, or, lights of these sort of people who came after 1924. Before that, we already had a system. We're not supposed to train our youth to dominate, because we're already dominating in one way or the other. So America doing this, or Victoria doing that before Spanish and Dutch and everything else, that's just common pattern. I don't know why people are not reading into. I mean, it's like common sense for a psychologist. It's if they're not doing it, then they're not mentally well. That group is not really, developed properly. So Muslims, right now, our submissiveness is adaptive. That's for sure. It started 1,000 years ago, but it's adaptive. But now that we know that cherry pickers in Muslim clergy around the world, around the planet, literally, and you can see that around the Western clerics a lot, they really come to, common terms with the whatever power that they're into in England or America or Canada or Europe. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised when American clerics are actually, shouting out slogans with rainbow colors in the background. I get that. But when Muslims in Muslim lands are cherry-picking ahadith and the Qur'an, I mean, I don't want to name names, but I've actually seen lectures where, mainstream scholars are literally saying that, these 17, 18 ayahs were just for the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not for the Ummah. I mean, it's like, you really need to be seriously uneducated to not call their bluff. And it's not the fact that they're trying to calm people. It's the fact that they themselves, they think they're doing service to the Ummah by keeping the status quo. I mean, Palestine is just a symptom of this disease. This happens when this kind of status quo is trying to be kept by the clergy. It's not just the politicians. The politicians are literally getting the definitions from the masjid. I mean, they don't come from Mars, right? We don't import Nawaz Sharifs or Imran Khans or the Egyptians or the Indonesians from, European lands. They're homegrown boys and girls who went to school, tried to learn Islam, and they knew that, Islam has nothing to do with politics, and politics has nothing to do with Islam. So you can see in any and every Muslim country, the people who are actually prone to going to politics and going to power, they themselves, they're devoid of the Islamic knowledge. And they're very spiritual people from their own hearts. I mean, you can take any kind of sample from any of these countries, and you'll find that, these people are praying. These people are, keeping their salat sometimes. Definitely very spiritual people. Try to be very moral. But they know that, Qur'an is for the masjids and the madrasas. We're in, administrative affairs. We need to hold office. We need to run politics. We need to know diplomacy and all of that stuff. So this kind of split and this chasm is okayed by the masjid. That's why you don't see masjids reacting to Palestine. Nowhere. Actually, my movement, I'm actually on the tour. My first tour to England was titled "The Masjid Has Fallen," because I needed to wake up the youth that, it's the masjid that's going to, resurrect the original definition of Islam.
So you said, Umar was the best thing to happen to planet Earth. Of course, after all the prophets, of course.
Obviously, yeah.
But what do you think then went wrong? Because you said that after the Khulafa Rashida, the mindset of enslavement to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or mindset of, to be subservient to other than Him crept in. Was this something that occurred right after the Khulafa Rashida, or was it something that happened due to colonialism, or something that maybe prepared the way for colonialism and then colonialism happened and made it worse or exacerbated?
Well, of course, colonialism did not help our plight at the time. Actually, we were, the two wars and the role of the Turks at that time did not really help the cause, because we already we had a multi-organ failure before the wars. Anything else, any catastrophe around the world would have actually and did damage us way more than anybody else. And I'm not just talking about the Arabian part of the world. I'm talking about even the regular definitions of Muslims about Islam. So we were kept under this little what's the word, this stifling period of where our Muslims were kept on going into these two streams, where one stream did not have anything to do with the other, where the regular mass were trained to be spiritual, and the political elite were trained out of Islam. They did no politician right now, not even the army or the civil bureaucracy or any kind of financial or a political elite. You pick out any sample, they're not going to justify any of their actions from the Quran. They know that it's not Quranic. But their spirituality is, and if you talk about their personal lives, they're going to be quoting verses like any scholar, because they are justifying their morality from the Quran somewhere, but at a personal level. On a political level, they know that the Quran has nothing to do with this. It's not that they deny it. They think it's a very personal matter. Or, for example, Egypt closing borders to the Palestinians. You think there's some remorse going on? No, this guy is justifying closing borders to Palestine, because he knows that in this current political system, he is actually doing service to the Egyptians by not inviting the Palestinian problems indoor. And that's a moral service he's doing to the Egyptians. He's sleeping real sound every night. Same thing happened to Bangladesh when the Burmese Muslims were coming in. That woman was blatantly, justifying her morality, and she was so okay with the fact, and she was actually arguing for a moral case of not letting the Burmese in. So these politicians are actually given this definition of morality through, I don't know what religion, because this is not Islam they're practicing. It's against common sense. But somehow their personal gyroscope is set through the Quran, and their global gyroscope, the global affairs, are not set through the Quran. They actually think that the global consensus is the final word of the morality, or on morality.
So then, based on your experiences, what are some of the ways we can help the Muslim youth break the fear of being labeled with labels that, in a sense, help control our mindsets and make us fearful of enacting Islam? Like, for example, being called a terrorist, a fanatic, extremist, anti-state, radical, and of course, Islamist.
You have so many case studies, and I'm not going to give you a classical answer about how to go towards the book or try and realize your own purpose, because that's just cliche now. I think there's so many case studies where the French or the black movement in America, they made sure that they're the one who actually played those terminologies for them, which were invented against them, so that they can actually channel that and harness that into the identity of the people. So I don't want to use the N-word here, but the blacks actually made sure that they overplay the N-word. It's a brand of slavery that the white actually entitled the whole population with, but they themselves, they channel it through their own identity, that this is something that we need to be proud of, and we need to actually own up to it. Unless we break that little glass ceiling, our psychology is not going to change. Just like that, if somebody calls me a terrorist, and a lot of people do, I actually don't react. I think Muslims should understand that, dominant power, any dominant power. Tomorrow, if Muslims are dominant, we're going to be branding some people terrorists, which are going to be against our philosophy. It's a very normal and natural tag to give to anyone who's going to create a deterrent. But I'm not going to deny the fact. Nobody can deny the fact that there's supposed to be a terrorist with some dignity against a big system. Okay, every tyrant is going to call anyone who's going to actually challenge the tyranny as a terrorist. That's a regular first mental response of the dominant force. So I don't know why we're so afraid of these tags and labels. And well, I can actually train them out of it by, channeling that very word and harnessing it into our own identity. That you want to call us a terrorist or fundamentalist or extremist or radicals. These are the best titles any group with some sort of dignity would get, who are trying to react against the power of evil. Because it doesn't matter what the power is, evil or not, or good. Anyone who's going to challenge the big power is going to be branded with these kind of titles. It's very normal. I don't know when our parents are going to realize, our psychosocial elements are going to realize, those propaganda machines, the social media people are going to realize that this is not something which is this plays for us. It doesn't play against us. Okay, so
but is there not a danger, perhaps? Sure, being called fundamentalist, you might say, well, we should be on, fundamentals, or, being, I think it was Izaki Naik who said this, being extremist, extremely kind, extremely just, and so on and so forth. But surely the issue of terrorists might be a bit of a...
you're in England.
A difficult term to approach.
Ironically,
they say reclaim.
No. Well, the English actually called the Irish terrorists for I don't know, 50 years straight on. That's actually where it started, by the way. The first people that ever got this brand was the Irish, when the Northern Ireland issue was going on. Now, no Irish is going to take any offense if I start, you're a terrorist. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's so we've overplayed that card for the English has overplayed that card for the Irish so much, so it doesn't really matter, because now, see, if the bully is only going to bully a boy who's going to be afraid of whatever is going to be, the most timid boy in the class, somebody who's actually trying to brand me, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm trying to own up to it, and I'm trained to own up to these kind of things. That's not going to matter to me. And all of a sudden, the juice is going to be the poison is going to run out of the whole brand. We ourselves are training our kids. It's not the West. It's not the Americans who are calling us terrorists. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I'm training my own son and daughter to be afraid of the word fundamentalists, extremists, radicals, terrorists. Because I know I'm not a terrorist. I'm not going to bomb any place. Somebody calls me a terrorist, does not, really give me an idea that, I'm going to prove you wrong or right by just doing something about it. It's the way you're going to respond and react, the way I'm going to be trained into reacting to these sort of things, right? That's where the first disposition, the first mental disposition lies. That comes from parents. So that's what I'm saying. I remember I was bullied. I was in Chicago. Remember, it was the first time I ever got bullied. My father told me that, if you're never going to start the fight, but make sure you finish it. So after that, I just held my ground. I got beaten up like crazy the first time. But next time, all of a sudden, I was the last man to be bullied, because I did not run away from the fight. Just like that, when people are calling Muslim terrorists, they're the one who are actually showing their fear of Muslims. In turn, ironically, Muslims are starting to get afraid of the labels and tags. That's why I just refer to the black movement. As soon as the black people stopped getting afraid of the tags, all of a sudden these tags started working for them. And these tags are actually becoming, the source of power now. And they actually come together because of these tags. That's exactly what happened with the Irish. Muslims are in dire need of being trained into a superior psychology, so that these kind of tags, they don't matter. Even the LGBT was a mental illness declared by this very country. You have to be in a hospital if you're calling yourself a gay or a lesbian. Now they actually take pride in the fact that they're LGBT or whatever alphabet they're going to add on to. They don't, it's not a taboo to call them, and they're not going to react that, if I call, are you a gay person? He'll be like, yeah, I'm a proud gay person. They can be proud of an actual mental illness, which I still believe is a mental illness. They can be proud of it. And we cannot possibly think to actually ridicule or dismiss them by using these tags. But we ourselves are getting dismissed by being radical. Alhamdulillah, I am a radical person. I would die for my beliefs. That is radicalism. There is no other definition of radicalism other than the guy who can literally die for the thing that he believes in. If you're not a radical Muslim about Allah and the Prophet and the Quran, you're not even a Muslim. Because if I'm saying, I could do anything but die for it, that's literally against the very tenet of the basics of Islam. That, I'm going to live for it, but I'm not going to die for Islam. Then I'm Elijah's Muhammad, nation of Islam, not Muhammad bin Abdullah's Muslim, right? So we are using the flavors and the labels, not the definition itself, number one. Number two, we're reacting to it as if we have something to hide, as if every Muslim is carrying a little nuclear reactor inside our homes. We're creating bombs, and we have, carrying weapons. And whoever's going to call me terrorist is going to, he knows that deep down secret of all of the Muslims coming together that, before this podcast, we had to hide our weapon under the table. And, that's how Muslims live and talk. That's not how we live and talk. So if somebody starts calling us a terrorist, it's his problem, his fear that he's manifesting on us. And we're being played by his fear. And we're so inferior that we're trying to please that little timid man who's so afraid of me that he thinks I'm carrying a weapon right now. And I'm actually trying to please this guy. That, you know what, I will prove to you, I'll strip naked right in front of you to show I'm not a terrorist. That's inferior psychology. That's where the base needs to be reset. And, it can only be reset inside the home with the mommy and the daddy.
So you think it's about combating the fear of being labeled, or the fear of reclaiming those labels? Like, do you think that we reclaim
labels are necessary? I think the more the people call Muslim terrorists, the more we know the Quran is actually working. They're still afraid. Our Muslim forces still recognized somewhere. The day people are going to stop calling Muslim terrorists, I myself, I'm going to think that we even lost that, that population credibility, that 2 billion people, we have some sort of a stature which is intimidating them, for them to keep, taking a jab at us. The 10 people in the room, and I'm supposed to be, fighting for the alpha. I'm not going to pick on the weakest guy. I'm going to pick on the strongest guy, right? And I'm always going to be intimidated by the strongest guy in the room. So if I'm trying to claim the alpha. So if Muslims are the number one problem for the world, that actually gives me enough hope that, there's still potential. We don't see it. They see it, right? I wish the Muslims would see it. That if still Muslims is still the biggest problem for the American West imperial objectives. That means they know something about the Quran and our potential, which we don't. You know what I'm saying? I wish more people who are talking about Muslims, good or bad way, it doesn't even matter, because, as long as they're going to go through it, they recognize us as some sort of a potential power. And I swear to God, we are, because Quran is the only book which has the solution to dominate. It actually says the word dominate. It actually forces Muslims to dominate through their performance, through their competence, through their knowledge, through their armaments, so that we cannot be bullied into any kind of submission to any kind of power. If there are two alternatives, then Islam is not the option. But Allah says there is only one option. There is no other alternative. Quran is not one of the options to choose from. It's the only option to choose from. That's the very basis of domination. If there were other books that we can actually, read and go into other than the Quran as well, is good to have. Quran is good to have. No, that's not what Islam is. So our basis is, our initiative in coming into Islam is to make sure that, everybody gets to know what the purpose of life here is, how to get to Allah Azza wa Jal, how to actually live according to the laws and commandments of Allah Azza wa Jal. If we're not giving everybody those commandments, we're not making sure everyone's eased into it, not forced into it, but eased into it, then we're not even doing our job. That's the original covenant that was given to the Jews. That's the same covenant given to the Muslims. And Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran says, if you're not going to abide by this covenant, I'm going to choose people who are better than you. Better than you means they're going to dominate, because Allah says, I'm going to choose people who are better than you over you. In Surah Muhammad, ironically, how beautiful, how delicious this choice of the verses inside the Surah Muhammad, that they're going to be better than you and I'm going to pick them over you. So Allah is going to make people dominate. And it's not rocket science. It's common sense. It's ingrained inside our systems.
Do you then think the way to challenge this dominance over Muslims is to appropriate the labels they use against us? And the reason why I say this is, as the philosopher like Hegel talked about the master-slave dichotomy, which is the slave hates the master and wants to fight against the master, is to summarize. But in defining, being fighting against the master, making his purpose, you could say, to fight against the master, he's inadvertently made the master again the center of his world, because he defines himself still relative to what the master says.
Double-edged sword. But what Hegel misses out on is the fact that whenever you enslave, or there is a master-slave relationship, no matter how deep the hatred goes in the hearts of the slaves, no matter how deep, it is not upon the slave. He's out of his control, but to mimic the master's philosophy, his actions, his psychology. The slaves are going to mimic the master, no matter who the master is, no matter who the slave is. That's why not even a single verse, not even a hint comes from a single verse of the Qur'an of how to live under a system which is not dominated by the word of God. We are not supposed to be thriving under any system which is other than the system of God. We're supposed to be striving towards establishing the system of God and easing people into it, not forcing, but easing. And how clear the perspective is through psychology as well. You'll be amazed that, you know what, in the Quran, Allah says, Surah Ibrahim alayhi salam prays to God that, you know what, oh God, do not make us, Rabbana la taj'alna fitnatan lil ladhina kafaru, do not make us. Imagine the irony of imagine the beauty of this irony. That do not make us Muslims the fitna for the kuffar. How can a Muslim be the fitna for the kuffar? The context of this ayah is very clear. The dominant system is the kuffar. The Muslims are under the kuffar at that time, and Muslims are praying under the kuffar. That, oh God, do not make us fitna for the kuffar. Why? How can you be a fitna for the kuffar? First of all, they're already dominant. How can you be the fitna? You are the Muslim. He's the kafir. How are you the fitna for the kuffar? Because the dominant force naturally is going to, natural assumption, the precursor is that if your philosophy was correct, your psychology was correct, you would not have been under me, you would have been over me. We are designed to put or create that archetype of the master, which is our ideal self, over us. So if someone is dominant over Muslims, he's going to do everything except coming to the Quran or the word of God, because he would naturally assume that, you know what, I'm superior to you, so that means my philosophy is superior to you, my psychology is superior to you, my methodology is superior to you, my ideology is superior to you, hence you are under me. That's why I want the masjid to resurrect the definition of Islam, because we ourselves are designed to put people over us now. And we're not just justifying, we're vetoing it to na'udhu billah ahadith, cherry picking and trumping all those ayahs which are forcing the Muslims to make sure that if something like this happens, you make sure that you come together, you do whatever it takes to enhance up your game, enhance your performance, raise the standards, and come on top again. So these sort of things are evident in any and every part of the stories Allah Azza wa Jalla is narrating in the Quran. We just don't want to look at it because it just, shows us the mirror. And nobody wants to see that ugly face and ugly truth that actually, is of it is reeking with slavery. Because the patterns don't lie.
So behind what the West, I suppose the labels it uses against Muslims and its need to control Muslims. I mean, certainly it has rivals like China and Russia, but it obviously can't really control them like it does the Muslim world currently. But do you think behind this need to dominate, and I know you said it was natural, but more specifically focused pressure and domination of the Muslim world, do you think behind that lies the fear of the unity of the Muslim world, the potential reunification of the Muslim world, the re-emergence of a caliphate? What are some of the things you think point to this fear in the West?
Well, let's just plot the landscape. Look at the forces against the imperial West. We have South America, not much to write home about. We have Africa, absolutely nothing going on there. We have Australasia, nothing going on there. China, Japan, and Russia. The Cold War is over. There's not much going on there. Okay, we'll talk about Putin. And that's just a one-off example right now. It's not really much of a thorn in anybody's, it's not. And Putin is a very good example, actually. Russia is still a formidable force to reckon with. Look at Pakistan, look at Indonesia, Malaysia, KSA, the UAE, the North African countries. I mean, these people are on the floor right now. I mean, there is absolutely nothing to worry about for any kind of country which has any kind of power. So tomorrow, if China starts to take over, it's not going to first and foremost counter Pakistan or Afghanistan or UAE or whatever, because that's just not there. Nothing's there. So America going crazy over the Muslim philosophy means that, he's afraid of the lowest common denominator in the planet right now. It's the lowest Muslims are the lowest common denominator in terms of politics, in terms of development, technology, science, mathematics, sociology. I mean, you name it. We're actually going downward spiral. If anyone, people should let us alone, and we're just going to die our own deaths. That's the kind of situation we're in. And the biggest power in the planet is thinking 24/7 about us. The weakest going in a downward spiral. There's something else going on here then. Them worrying about China or Japan or any other force, I can understand that. But I am the biggest headache for America. I'm the biggest headache of NATO. 24/7, all the forces come together, start developing think tanks like RAND and Skull and Bones and all of that stuff, and Freemasons and all of that stuff coming together, trying to, make sure that, all of these flags are, aimed towards my book. There's something else to think about then, because I am not politically well. I'm in the ICU. I'm not socially well. I am the ICU socially. I am financially. I'm not even in the ICU. I'm in the mortuary. Right? You know what I'm saying? I'm in the morgue. Right? Sorry. And everybody else talking about how to mitigate me. I don't want to boast Muslim ego right now. What I'm saying is, it's the Quran that they're worried about. It's not the Muslims. And I'm telling you, they read the Quran. I mean, anybody would read the Quran and be like, you know what? Right off the offset, right off the bat, the Quran is talking about, how to, come into power. I mean, that's the scariest eye of anybody who's going to actually read the Quran who's not a Muslim. So this book has a proven record, has a 1,000 years of a region where they actually never let anything else happen other than the Quran. They had produced philosophers, they produced mathematicians, they produced politicians, they produced the biggest administrators, they produced armies like they dominated from the Crusades onwards to everybody. They actually went to Spain, from Andalusia to Indonesia. So they know that, the potential is in the book, not the people. They've tried to dismantle Libya, Afghanistan, they practically are running Pakistan and Egypt. That's the 51st and 2nd state of America right now. I don't even want to call KSA because that's even, America wouldn't take up ownership of that land right now. Any and everything is under the belt, and there's still, I'm the biggest fear of George W. Bush to Obama to Trump. That means, we got something to play with and something to work on right now. It's quite a thing. Because Trump does not talk about China as much as he talks about Islam and getting the people out. And China is actually a serious threat. So the potential is in the book. And who's actually, dimming down Muslims? It's not Trump. It's not the West. It's not the Jewish lobby. It's the Muslim scholar who's dimming down the Muslim, making sure that, Muslims do not come on top. because they're actually enforcing that, you know what, you go against your current regimes, even if you go democratically, impeach them, come up with a good a fluid argument against the current narrative and try and build force. That too is anti-Islamic. Just obey and serve and bow down to whoever comes on top of you. Doesn't matter. uh, Pakistan is the only country that actually officially has killed the Palestinians more than Israelis. Both Pakistanis have killed more Israelis than Israelis, Palestinians than Israelis. That's the only country that officially hit with the Air Force to Palestine. You need to understand, this is what happens when, you take the Islam out of politics. And this was a good thing that, that our army was doing at that time. It was an official war. And, they carpet bombed, and, our Air Force was striking down Jordanians and Palestinians. The worst day before 7th October in the history of Palestine was because of Pakistan, called the Black Friday. Where, so what happens? So look at what, Saudi Arabia is doing to Yemen. Imagine that, a Muslim killing Muslim. Look what Saddam Hussein was, doing, and nobody was actually inside the Muslim clergy was, talking about. Look at what Egypt was, Hosni Mubarak did for all of his life, literally all of his life. And Egyptians were Muslimized to obey this guy. Something else is going on here. We do not need Donald Trumps or the Rothschilds or whatever, or what have you. No, we don't. To dismantle any kind of resistance against any evil power, dominant or not, we have our own, clergy to take care of that mission for them.
Do you think there's some change in the issue of the clergy and the masjid, which the masjid has fallen, that tour you did? Do you think there's actually a change against that and going back to Islam? Do you think that we are along a path of revival and that we're further along it than it was 50 years ago? What are some of the measurable markers of this, if you do think we are further?
I think you want me to pull out some silver lining out of all of this going on. That's what you want me to do. Then I'm sorry. I think the kind of mass movement because of Palestine that just happened from every part of the world, especially the Muslim world, that actually was a big alarm, and because it just ended up as a mere protest, nothing else, other than something which was done by Iran or Yemen. Nothing else happened from the Muslim mass or the clergy or the politicians. Well, the politicians were never going to do it anyway. So I think it's a big alarm. I'm not a guy who's going to lose hope because I'm a Muslim, but I was thinking, because I am practically, since October 7th, I was flying to Melbourne on the 6th of October when this happened. And when this happened, I changed all of my programming, which was the Muslim Identity Tour, to Palestine Tour, obviously, because of whatever happened on those days. And I was thinking it's going to be, it's going to create, havoc and hell in the Muslim lands. Muslims are going to come to the street and everything is going to happen. But I'll give you an example. In Muslims, most of the Muslim clergy was split into two. One was saying that, they actually officially went to our government and they pledge allegiance to our government of not doing anything about it. And so we'll take care of the population. Don't worry. No fatwa is going to come against you guys. Just don't worry. Sit tight. Do what you were doing before this. We're going to take care of the mass. And the second faction was saying, you know what? We will not be questioned for whatever is going on in Palestine because we are paying taxes to the armies and the governments. If they're not going to do anything, so we've done our bit. These are the two. There is no third kind of pedestal in the Muslim or in the masjid. There is no third kind of masjid here. There are only two kinds of masjids. One is purely for the government appeasing, and the other one is, trying to get a moral high ground out of not doing anything.
And what? But why do you think that is? Why do you think then, if there's only these two types of, you could say, responses from Islamic scholars, why do you think they are responding like that? Why do you think
Well,
they
if
are silent?
Madkhalis do that in Arabia, I can understand that. But everybody else is not a Madkhali. I don't know. I mean, I'm in heated debates with the scholars of Pakistan just about 2 years straight on after October 7th. I cut my Australian trip, came back home. I tried to, go to every school, college, and every big campus so that I can create a movement. You know what I was actually calling? I was calling for a fatwa. Fatwa for not anything else, but to ban votes and call it haram to vote for these people. If they're not going to do anything for Palestine, I'm talking about intervention, military intervention, then it is haram to vote for these people. That's the fatwa I was calling for in Pakistan, and still am, by the way. But you know what? The best I can get out of them was officially that, it is incumbent upon Muslim governments to do jihad for Palestine. That's not going to cut anything. They already knew that. Everybody knows that. It doesn't take a fatwa to know that, it is incumbent upon all Muslim governments to do jihad against Israel for Palestine. The fatwa required that tadbiq, that, if they don't do it, then what's the regular Joe going to do? What's the fatwa for the regular Joe then? If this government does not do it, then what's the demand of Islam upon the regular man? And that's a very simple line to write. That if they don't do it, don't vote for them. I mean, who would put that into the umbrella of anarchy, right? That's not anarchy. That's just as democratic as it gets. They just boycott the voting process. Make sure, you dry them out so that they would know that, because politics is a business in Muslim world. They spend billions to make trillions. It's that simple. So if they're not going to be able to get trillions out of this country, which is all corruption money, then they're gonna run out of fuel to run that machine of corruption. And I wanted to harness that very corrupt machine of corruption to use that for my own advantage, right, for the Palestinians.
Is that only Pakistan? What about dictatorships in the Muslim world where this voting is
Doesn't matter.
non-existent or false?
No. I'm blessed to be in Pakistan because I don't need my missiles cannot be intervened by Jordan or the KSA. You know who's running the KSA army? A Pakistani general. That's the field marshal. Our ex-chief is the current chief of the Saudi Arabian army. You know what I'm saying? So he's got to really come out of his skin to intercept Pakistani missiles coming. I'm not saying he can't, because obviously he's going to be, doing whatever MBS is going to tell him to. But our technology is far superior from Iranian drones and missiles going through Jordan to Israel. Plus, we have so many other ways because we got the triad. We got the complete triad. We can hit to 3 different ways to Israel. I'm not saying start the war right now. I'm just saying even if you started to plan for it, this conflict would have been over. We would have been a bigger party we would have been at the bigger table. We would have been negotiating terms on behalf of Palestinians because America's not going to let us, intervene through military. All of a sudden, the big table would have opened and, we would have been, part of the negotiation team. Because, we have shown the teeth. We've shown that we're caring. We don't have to shoot a bullet. Let's just sit down and, just first call for the ceasefire, then call for the solution. I know they're not going to go for the one-state solution that I propose. The original state solution, that's what I call it. They are the 2-state solution, puppets on my government as well. And current Muslim clergy officially is talking about 2-state solution. What kind of a Muslim and clergy would say 2-state solution for Israel and Palestine? That's not either a Muslim or a clergy. Even the Jewish rabbis don't want the 2-state solution. They're true to their book. They don't want the 2-state solution. They also want a single Jewish state. Our Muslim clergy is talking about 2-state solution. Imagine how low can in common sense go? That if either you're not a Muslim, or if you are a Muslim, you're not clergy, right? But if a Muslim clergy starts talking about 2-state solution, then, even with this fatwa, with the army going in, it's not going to solve the actual problem. Because the actual problem is not about October 7th, right? We all know that. It's not about what's going on right now. It's about why it's going on. So, and I'm not trying to, I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't want to get rid of the Jews from Israel. I want the system for the Palestinians, for the state, their ownership back to the land. I need them to run the system. I need the Jews to pray in their synagogues. I need the Christians to come to their churches. I need that, that system under the actual, owners of the land. That's the one-state solution. Because whenever I say one-state solution, all of a sudden, it comes off as if you want to just kill all the Jews and get rid of them. No, that's absolutely not, but by far Islamic. You know what I'm saying? So, but currently, every Muslim scholar, you name one scholar that is mainstream and is not calling for the two-state solution. Give me one. And I'm going to give you at least 200 from Pakistan right away, right off the bat. So you think I'm going to undermine the fact or overlook the fact that, oh my God, how did he come up with this? Or how does he think like this? I know why he thinks like this. He's actually using the Qur'an and the Hadith to think like this. Imagine that. When I argue with them, they actually start quoting the ayahs, and I'm thinking, did you really think the book of God is going to come up with a two-state solution? You using the book of God to come up with a two-state solution here? And you're using the book of God to tell me that وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ does not apply in this case? Are you telling me that we have two different books? This is exactly what's going on right now. That the government is actually, calling itself a lot more. You know what? The Pakistani government actually proposed Donald Trump for a Nobel Prize for Peace. Our government officially requested Donald Trump for Peace Prize. The guy who actually put Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That's how far they are from the actual knowledge of the Qur'an or the Hadith. And they are, they are the more pious of the people around the Muslim lands right now. And imagine what's going on around the other part of the Muslim countries.
Well, you mean you've taken the sentiment of the Ummah that obviously you do acknowledge, obviously, that there's a great pain in the Ummah for what's happening in Palestine, and you framed it as an aqeedah issue. Why is it not just a political issue but an aqeedah issue?
Oh. Should I start chronologically or alphabetically?
Summarize if you can.
I gotta just give you one line, okay? One line. All the ahadith of eschatology, all the ahadith. Prophet ﷺ said that there is not a single prophet, even starting from Nuh alayhi salam, who did not warn about the Dajjal and whatever hell is going to break loose on the planet. The biggest fitnah of all fitnahs. Just the chapter of eschatology itself should make everyone aware that whatever is happening in that region, and it does not take a rocket, an academic scholar of eschatology, an epidermal view of eschatology would know that if I do not do right now anything that can be done right now in that region, then I am party to setting up the stage for the biggest fitnah of all fitnah. That's why it's the topic of Aqidah. Because if I'm party to two-state solution, and tomorrow, if the Dajjal comes in and he's going to set stage right there on the state, which I recognize as the second state from one of the two, and he's going to do whatever he's going to do, I am party to whatever hell is going to break loose upon all the human beings, let alone Muslims. That's why it becomes, eschatologically speaking, whoever is helping Israel right now in that part of the world is setting stage for the biggest calamity since Nuh alayhi salam's flood. This is why it becomes part of whatever destruction that's going to happen. I don't want to be, putting a brick in that machine of the biggest destruction that is ever going to come. And you think Israel is setting up a stage or helping that or not solving this problem, is not adding to that problem? You tell me as a regular man, just out of common sense. Eschatology is not about Israel. Is our eschatology, our Prophet is not talking about Israel. 90% of all eschatological hadiths are setting in Israel. Every big problem is rooting from that region. That's why it's a part of our Aqidah. I'm not one of those guys that, say battle Masjid Aqsa. I'm not one of those guys. I think saving Palestinian life is way more sacred than saving Masjid Aqsa. I'm one of those guys who actually puts the Muslim, value of Muslim blood way more than any building, even Masjid al-Haram. I want to save a drop of Muslim blood. I think is way more sacred than anything that, that people are calling for. I'm not saying we should not say Masjid al-Aqsa. Obviously, that's pretty close, and I'm very sentimental about this. But that's not part of my Aqidah. You know what I'm saying? But saving Masjid al-Aqsa is not part of my Aqidah. But I know that, what my Prophet foretold about my time or the time to come. And everything's about that place, 2-3 cities, 600 square kilometers, that's all. And that's where it's going to happen. And they're all setting it up right now. They're using the word Greater Israel. They're actually using the word Messiah. They're actually using it 24/7. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You can keep half of it, where you can use your Messiah prophecy. You can use your third temple thingy. You can do whatever. Just give us back our part of the land, and so we can even live here and feed our own people here. That's absolutely not solving the bigger problem in our Aqidah.
Well, you've often stressed the liberation of Masjid al-Aqsa in Palestine, and you say that it's the responsibility of the Ummah to achieve this. Why do you believe ordinary Muslims, even far from the Middle East, must not see this as someone else's struggle?
Someone else, as in the Arabian struggle?
As in, why do you think that ordinary Muslims currently, for example, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Algeria, Morocco, why do you think that they not see this as their personal struggle? Like in Pakistan recently, when India launched missiles and all of Pakistan united to respond, it was something that everyone was supporting, a retaliation, a response. There were people willing to even, directly fight. And I suppose
I am one of them. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So why do you think that the Muslim Ummah has not responded in that way to the missile and bombings of the Palestinians in Gaza?
No, well, people have responded. More Muslims are emotionally and try to financially get involved in matters of Palestine. For Pakistan, it was just a Twitter feed, nothing else. We didn't get anything else from the Muslims other than the, warm sentiments. I mean, we didn't get any army aid or any financial aid because obviously it was too short term. You couldn't really get anything. But
surely, meaning like the Pakistani army, the Pakistani government, which some people might say the same thing.
It was the same thing. Yeah.
Felt, many people commented they felt obliged by public pressure to respond militarily or lose face or worse.
That's exactly what my case is.
Why don't the Muslims around the world apply that same pressure on their governments to the point that their governments must respond the same way Pakistan responded to India? Thereby responding to, obviously, Israel's assault on the Palestinians.
I've asked this question from my government. I've asked this question from all the people that I've met, all the scholars that I've met, that, all of a sudden when India attacks you, you start using the Qur'an and the jihad and all of that stuff. Why are these two doubles? Why is Palestine different? All of a sudden the Qur'an does not give you that energy or give you that directive, and it's only Indian army that actually, reminds you of the Qur'an. And the same ayah that I'm actually quoting for Palestine, you just don't want to talk. You're actually arguing around it. So they're not, wise enough to, or looking at the big picture, or they suffer from some sort of an amnesia, because I think it's the Second World War that actually, it's this country, your country's Sir, what's his name? Winston Churchill. That actually, he himself did not know that he's going to create a totally different psychological spin for different people of the same creed and ethnicity, from 57 different kind of people. He didn't know he was going to create different psychologies. I know. I mean, I read the reasons of why they were, obviously, because that was a political demarcation of the splits. So now the masjid actually comes to the rescue of the local politician, comes to the rescue and spins it into an identity. So an Egyptian all of a sudden becomes a totally different people for me. Yemeni becomes a totally different people. And the Arabian, the Syrian actually is not as an Arab as the guy living in Mecca. So these new identities, which I believe is the meaning of the ayah, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, that's way bigger than Shia-Sunni split. This split of 57 different identities is way more devastating than the Shia-Sunni split, or the Salafi, or the other splits, or even the Maliki and the Hanafi split. That's not as devastating as this deeper cut, which cuts our political power, which cuts through our financial power, which cuts through our social power, so much so that now we have literally cut off the emotional power, which I would have been connected to you, you've been connected to me. So you can feel bad, but I swear to you, you can feel the same kind of pain for the South African blacks, or something happened to the Philippines, or wherever in the world, because that's your pure heart that is actually aching right now. That's not a Muslim purpose that is being shaken. If something were to happen to Pakistan, and every Muslim everywhere in the world is not going into cognitive dissonance or getting his purpose shaken up, that means there's a totally different Islam right now than the one practiced by the Sahaba. So these 57 identities are cut so deep now that our emotional identities are also different country to country. So that's a problem that we need to solve, because then that's the identity masjid gives to the current government. So any Muslim government, except the Palestinians, every Muslim government was calling for their own government rather than, transcending those fatwas across borders. Nobody did that, which means that it's the definition coming in from the masjid has already committed to the definitions of Winston Churchill's definition. The new nation is, see, the way Elijah Muhammad said, you can be a 5% Muslim or a 50% Muslim, just like the current, national identity of a Muslim is just like that. We're just not calling it because, we don't want to see the mirror. Otherwise, a Pakistani cannot be a full Muslim. I am going to be 57% of the for Islam or Muslim if I'm just a Pakistani. Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, we had some 90 percentiles there. People were practicing 90% of Islam. And they were, by the way. They could do little big sins here and there, but, they were true to the 90%. We currently are 1/57th of the identity of Islam, no matter where we are. So, we're way worse than Elijah Muhammad's version of Islam right now. Our identity is scattered and fragmented into 57 complete pieces. And I'm going to feel that sense of completion, that false sense of completion of Islam, if I'm true to my country and my flag and practicing whatever I can only for that country. Same thing happened to Bangladesh, right? This woman, with all her arrogance reeking through the fact that she was so confident that she's doing the right thing as a Muslim as well. And by the way, ironically, that Christian guy from CNN or BBC was interviewing, and he was crying. He was crying over whatever the Bangladeshi army was. They were shooting at the boats for immigrants coming in, refugees trying to come in. So we have this false sense of identity of Islam because we call ourselves Muslims. We think this governance is Muslim, and there's so much of the Quran and the flavor of the masjid comes into play because of our personal background. Nothing to do with the parliaments, nothing to do with the senates, nothing to do with the rules of democracy, nothing to do with the law. By the way, still the Victorian law being practiced in Pakistan and Bangladesh and India or whatever. So we have this false sense of this completion that just I am a way better Muslim and I'm going to go to Jannah if I die for my country, and that's like the epitome of Islam. That's like as black and white as it gets. I'll give you an irony. Pakistan and Bangladesh actually have fought against each other over a little skirmish, and both of them gave the highest honor of the Shahada to both of the soldiers. And they were Muslims. Now both of them cannot be, on the right side of the story here. One of them has to be the bad guy. But imagine the irony that this new false sense of completion that you get, that literally the same population in Pakistan, Bangladesh, close to, I'm thinking they're going to surpass us. So 300 million Muslims on both sides of the flank think that their dude, is going to go to Jannah, and they're going to give him the highest honor. And the Pakistanis think that their dude is going to go to Jannah, guaranteed. He's got the highest honor. And all of 300 million people actually believe the exact opposite of each other. And they both believe that they're doing, that's the Islamic truth. Now, you tell me, whose family should I go to and break the news to that, you know what, if it were both of you guys were just doing it for the country, I'm sorry, that's the biggest anti-Islamic concept that you can concoct, and then you shoved it down your cells, and you believe it so fully that I can't even, the whole Qur'an, if I give you as an argument, you're still not going to buy into it because you're raised into it. That's the problem that I'm trying to actually show to Muslims, that, you know what, it's been too many generations, it's been too long, and it's been too much of this belief seeping right down to your, nth cell. So I'm not going to be able to argue myself out of it. Just read on your own and read the Seerah at a stencil. Find out that, if either that version of Islam is correct or yours, because both cannot be correct. And we all know that version of Islam is correct. That's the Seerah we're talking about.
So you mentioned, Muslim identity being, in a sense, broken. And in your UK tour, you focused on our Muslim children being raised with broken identities. So just want to unpack that a little bit more. What is a broken identity? What causes it? And how can we mend it?
Well, it's rather simple. My priority, there's a hierarchy of priorities, right? If if the top hierarchy, the top scaffolding of that hierarchy is not Allah Azza wa Jal and the commandment of Allah Azza wa Jal, then I do not have a Muslim identity. I have all the reasons to call myself a good man or a good person, or even a good Muslim for all I care. But there is only one stencil to measure your Muslim identity, and that's our Prophet ﷺ. That's it. There is no other human being, not even from Abu Bakr Siddiq to the Abdullah bin Zubayr, the last Sahabi who fought against Hajjaj bin Yusuf. All of them combined are not going to give me the Muslim identity. Only Muhammad bin Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to give me the identity of Islam. Now, we qualify those Sahabis in a real hierarchy of order. And where do we get the hierarchy from? Because of the hadith about the Sahabis. Because of the Seerah of the Sahabi living up to the Prophet ﷺ's way, the Sunnah. So if the Sahabis, we qualify Sahabis on the Muslim identity based on the Prophet ﷺ, there is no other way for any other man to come up with any other way for a new definition of Muslim identity. So you need to understand, it's the simplest way of measuring Muslim identity is to read the Seerah, to find out what the Prophet ﷺ did and why he did and when he did, whatever he did. It's that simple. So why it is the precedence we can take of, since he did this because of this reason, now there's a new situation. I can use the istinbat from the reasoning he did, or the ruling that was there and it's not there anymore, and or istidlal, not just istinbat, and just try and keep my identity by doing something new, but based on something old, which is 1400 years old. It is that simple. Everybody does that. We all do that for our current constitution and the law, and we call ourselves, citizens of whatever country. We go to the biggest supreme courts of, what do you call it, Supreme Court here?
The High Court.
Yeah, the High Court. And I can talk to the biggest panel of the King's Council or whatever judges that they're sitting in, and I'm going to quote from the Irish law or the common law or whatever law, and he naturally has to side with me because I'm quoting precedents. We are Muslims. We quote precedents for our own selves, even in our own seclusion. I'm my solitude. I'm using precedents from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Otherwise, I can't justify. I can't, fool my own self or anybody else. And two Muslims, when they talk to each other, it's the most common thing. It's not rocket science. Everybody knows it. Even 10-year-old kids do that. They don't do this because it's against the Prophet ﷺ's teachings. We are trying to embody the archetype of the Prophet ﷺ consciously and subconsciously. And even if you're not, we know we're failing. Even if we're doing it intentionally coming out of the archetype, we know that we're coming out of the archetype. We know it exists. That is my Muslim identity. I am committing zina, or I'm taking bribe, or I'm killing somebody, or I'm, financial corruption, or stealing something, or I'm staring at a woman, as little as and as big as, soothe and whatever. I know that the archetype exists. I'm consciously coming out of it. I have remorse. I will feel bad. I will feel guilt. Why do you think there's a guilt, of not just the big sins, but even not praying the 2 rakahs of Sunnah in Fajr? There's a guilt, because that's my Prophet's identity. That's not a fard. That's my Prophet's identity, that, this is how important it is. And I'm not just talking about the basic tenets. I'm talking about those little, on the fringe things that we do, which are, in the outer orbits of, regular everyday chores. So when you have a child born in England or anywhere, America or Canada, it's not in the Muslim land. It's, he does not get to hear about the Prophet in his school or being taught the Quran in school. Not everybody's practicing or talking about the Quran. That's called England or anywhere else where, it's not a Muslim land. Why would they actually be, if there's no way that you're going to keep a Muslim child in a Muslim bubble inside England? Obviously, he's going to go out. He's going to see, most of the people they never quote the Quran. They never quote the Prophet. They never quote the hadith or the seerah or the sunnah or the verse of the Quran. So he has a natural gyroscope running of the fitrah of how are they checking that morality and how are they calling themselves a good person. And ironically, they're dominant, they're progressive, they're putting things on the table, they're inventing stuff, they're actually calling something a law, they're actually trying to, create justice among things. They have empathy, and I'm sure most of English, the West has a lot more empathy than Muslim right now. So the child actually goes into cognitive dissonance, that if you guys are running around such a well-adjusted, well-oiled machine, apparently, and I'm not a scholar or an academic to understand the fractures of the English system and their philosophies, which is, where all of these things are coming out. But a regular kid is going to naturally uphold this system as, the right system. Otherwise, murder is not allowed, theft is not allowed, deceit is not allowed, lying is not allowed. That's my natural fitrah, asking for things. England is giving them, every child. So he's like, okay, that's the 2 versions of the truth. One is my version mommy's teaching me. One is the version that's being practiced there, and they're nice people. They have a law. They punish the evil. They're trying to uphold the truth. So who's right and who's wrong here? That's as basic as it gets for a 5 and 6-year-old. They don't say it because they do not have the language to say it, the grammar to express it. But they're feeling it. Everybody feels it. That's why kids keep talking about religion. Not even big scholars talk about religion as much as kids in school. As soon as a Muslim kid is sitting with a Christian kid, a Muslim kid is the one who's going to talk about religion to his Christian kid. The Christian kid is not going to talk about, hey, you're a Muslim. Hey, what do you believe in, man? And how come you believe you're right? Muslim kid is going to initiate and crack this conversation open every single time. You take a sample, you'll find out. You know why? Because we're the minority. Minorities do that. It is that simple. But Muslim philosophy is ingrained so deeply, and I don't know why people do that at the age of 4 or 5. They start talking about Akhirah and Jahannam and Jannah to our little toddlers. Don't do that, parents. So Muslims are going to do that even if they are in the majority in Pakistan or Egypt. If Muslim kids are sitting with a Christian kid in school, they're going to talk about, is Jesus God? Why do you believe Jesus is God? Because we're actually, indoctrinating that philosophy from early age. And as soon as that child comes out in Luton or Birmingham or Manchester or London, he is naturally going to have 2 corresponding, exactly opposing force. Sometimes, most of the time, the English force is going to be way more powerful than the philosophical force of the child, the parents. So he's going to be intimidated as if he does not know the truth. So that's why when the referendum, when the survey was taken, when 7/11 happened, 83% of British Muslims said that they're British first and Muslims second. That's 83% on record. Google it up. You'll find out. I was reading it while it was going on. 7/11 when it happened. You think all of them were being politically correct? All of them politically correct? They had the sense to go into political correctness. They were all afraid of something. Every part of England and every age, every demographic, every socioeconomic class, every gender. That's not possible. It doesn't work like this. So much so that if I ask a Pakistani now, the problem is so deep. If this referendum happens in Pakistan, I'll tell you this right now, kid you not, I wouldn't be surprised if 50% of Pakistanis do not say that we're Pakistanis first and Muslims second. See, the problem is seeped in so much. That's the power of dominant force, wherever it is. And England is not a dominant force. The Caucasians are. Christians are not the dominant force. America is not a Christian country, nor is England. We just archetype all of these and put them into the boxes because they're white, Caucasian. Since the Church of England was a Christian, King James Version of the Bible comes from this country. The patron of King James Version is still King Charles, right? So it's a flavor that we've already, put in our own mind in the last generation. We just give as inheritance to our kids. So even Pakistani kids right now think England is a Christian country, America is a Christian country, even though from any angle that you look at, America is not a Christian country, certainly not a Catholic country. By the way, till the 1990s, America was a predominantly Protestant country. The population was way more Protestant than Catholics. And Pakistani would believe that, a regular Muslim would believe that America is a Catholic country because of the flavors of interface of Hollywood or YouTube and social media. The dominant forces, the dominant celebrities are Catholics. That's how it works. That's how the identity comes in. So if we're giving false identities to different big nations, how you think we're going to actually give our own selves true identity under those nations? We're not going to be able to do that because King Charles with all the king's men versus my daddy at home who's not even home when I come home because he's at work. You tell me, King Charles with all the king's men is going to dominate my identity, call for the underpinnings to the whole outer shell, the inner nucleus of my identity, or my daddy, who's Abdul Jabbar, a factory worker in Luton, who cannot even, cross the street without getting nervous about him getting a ticket from whatever. Even he doesn't even commit a mistake. He's so afraid. He's so intimidated. You think his identity I'm going to take, or King Charles, Mountbatten? No, there's no comparison here. And that's why you see American white supremacists being highlighted, even though they're less than 10%, less than 5%. But they're going to get a way bigger, interface for all Muslim eyes and ears, even though they don't really exist in that kind of proportion. Our minds are going to keep looking for them, and we're going to find them everywhere we go. Because we already, the archetypes exist in our own boxes. And even if I see a white guy who's not a white supremacist, I am naturally going to think he is one or I'm going to make him prove he's not. This is how identity markers get installed inside our systems. Hence, coming back to your original question, Muslims are being deemed terrorists. Obviously, they've been marked. That's an identity. In the minds of those people, we've been marked. These are markers. They grow up with it. So we can't kick it out like this. We need to, earn our pedestal where we actually change the definitions of the words and those labels. Unless we come together, become a dominant force, we perform in sciences and mathematics and academia, we perform in technology, we perform in political power, we actually rule the political power. We do not have the pawns or the pieces on the board to change the definitions of the markers somebody came up with, even if it were them or whoever, it doesn't matter. It's that simple.
So do we have a power of our own self-identification then? Do you think?
What of my? I'm sorry.
Like, can we then self-identify as instead of letting other people define our narratives are.
I'll tell you. You know what
we define ourselves.
I'll tell you what the game of the invisible, the biggest enemy of Islam is not Trump or anybody else. That's Shaitan himself. I think the finest game that he played was to make sure that a Muslim man or woman does not know of at a certain threshold about our own Prophet. We know of our Prophet at a certain threshold. He's not letting the regular Muslims go over that threshold. If we all knew our Prophet, just know him, read about him, and that's why you'll see millions of Hufaz in Islam, but you will see 1 in a million Muslim man or a woman who's read the Seerah. That's the finest game is played to make sure the Muslim, because we only have one Savior. We only have one way to the truth. We only have one way to power as well. We have only one way to policies as well. We have only one way to our psychology as well. That's the actual base, the psychology. We uplift the psychology by making our Prophet so famous and brand him from a child, from as early as we can, as early as 1.5 year old, as soon as he actually starts to understand, because I know how the brain actually works, and brand him at certain stage at an eclectic level, so that age-wise branding of our Prophet goes inside the mind of a Muslim boy and a girl. And it's just 3 phases, under 7, over 7, under 11, over 11, and under 40. Literally, it's that simple. I'm just talking about the big, and biologists would know why I'm talking about these splits. And the brand of Prophet cannot be the same for a 13-year-old. It's a totally different spectrum we're talking about, part of the spectrum. The thing that you're going to talk about the Prophet to a 14-year-old are not the same thing that you're going to talk about with the 7-year-old. So much so, it's ironically, and you'll be surprised by how I'm going to finish the statement, that the grandeur of the Prophet, the way you're going to narrate the grandeur of the personality of the Prophet, is way more in demand by a 7-year-old, under 7-year-old, than a teenager. That's how psychology works. That's why the heroes that we taught when we were kids were way bigger heroes when we were kids than the heroes that we have, which we now have. You need to understand how human brain is designed. It starts from, enhancing and inflating and, enunciating way bigger spectrums when we're kids, and that spectrum starts to shrink as much as we grow. So much so that you really need to impress me. But you don't really need to impress my son when he's 7. You just have to be nice. You need to understand how simple this is. And you know what we do? We do the exact opposite. Instead of making him the biggest hero, how, I'll tell you later, but we actually give him the smallest bites. And when he's growing into a teenager, we try and, make the whole movie seem as if, it's bigger than what it is. And then he's calling us for it. It's like, you know what, you're enunciating it too much. You don't even know how to talk about it. And you're boring me out of it. That's how Muslim kids are coming out of the Prophet's archetype. This is the problem that it can be easily solved by just, flipping the prism of how we introduce our own Prophet to our own Muslim kids. It is that simple.
Okay. On that note, thank you so much for attending this podcast. Some very interesting insights and a lot of food for thought for a lot of people here. And I look forward to maybe having you on again.
Inshallah, anytime. Yeah. Anytime.
Okay, so this has been the Narrative House podcast with our esteemed guest, Sahil Adeem. I hope you all found it beneficial and insightful, and something which will evoke you to further investigate more of what he said, and also to the questions that he has raised for us to look into those questions and find those answers. So, barakallahu feekum, everyone. I'm Abdullah Andalusi, and I hope to see you all in the next podcast. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.